Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Humans of Forensics podcast. My name is Victoria, and I'm a first-year student hoping to specialize in the forensic biology program next year. I have with me two other members of the Forensic Society, along with Dr. Luke, who we have the pleasure of interviewing today.
Hi, my name is Guoria, and I'm also a first year student looking to try and get into forensic biology next year, and I'm super excited.
Hi everyone, my name is Noah. I'm a first year. I'm hoping to try to specialize in forensic psychology. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Dr. Luke.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. I am Vivienne Luk. I am a faculty member in the Forensic Science program at UTM. And I suspect that most of you probably know me as your professor in FSC 239, which is the Introduction to Forensic Science course.
Awesome. So before we get into the interview, let's just take a minute to discuss an exciting new breakthrough in the forensics community.
I'm sure many of you already are aware of the wrongful conviction of Guy Paul Morin for Christine Jessup's murder in 1980, while he was cleared by DNA evidence in 1995 and received a significant sum of comprehension. It was just last year in 2020 that DNA evidence identified Calvin Hoover, a Jessup family friend who died in 2015 as the true killer.
A quick backstory on this case was that Christine Jessup was 9 years old when she disappeared on October 3rd, 1984, after school in Queensville, Ontario. This caused massive panic and resulted in police, firefighters, and volunteers searching for this missing girl. Christine's remains were found on the field in December 31st, 1984, in Sunderland, Ontario, by a farmer and was discovered to have been sexually assaulted and stabbed to death.
And due to the pressure of the homicide case, partnered with inexperienced police forces and poor communications, substantial error had arisen. There were semen stains found on Christine's underwear, yet at this time, DNA analysis technology was not advanced enough to come up with conclusive results. The integrity of the investigation was also compromised due to the biasing relationship with the Jessup family in determining suspects. The investigators should have kept a fair distance from the family to avoid biases such as that.
For example, a situation became known years later where the lead investigators had persuaded her mother and her brother to reconsider the time in which they had arrived home on the day of Christine's disappearance. This changes the window of opportunity that the family's next door neighbor, Guy Paul Morin, would have had.
Perceptions also played a large role in biasing the investigation. The Morin family was what some may call the outcast of the community, and additionally, Morin was deemed suspicious when he did not join the search for Christine nor attend her funeral. The investigators also viewed him as having inside knowledge of the location of the body. Morin was arrested on April 22nd, 1985, and was denied bail, spending 10 months in jail awaiting trial on a first-degree murder charge.
And during trial, a piece of evidence against him included a hair found on Christine's body, which allegedly matched Morin's, as well as microscopic clothing fibers found in his car that were used to link him with Christine. Yet there were a series of investigative shortcomings, including the improper collection and retention of physical evidence from the body site, as well as police notes that were missing, inadequate, or misleading.
Morin was later convicted of first-degree murder on July 30th, 1992.
Using advanced technology, a third attempt at DNA results capable of verifying whether Morin was the killer inconsistent with Morin's DNA, effectively ruling him out as a viable suspect. On January 23, 1995, Morin reached a verdict of not guilty.
So finally, on October 15th, 2020, the Toronto police announced they had identified a friend of the Jessup family, Calvin Hoover, as the man responsible for Christine's murder. This was done using genetic genealogy tracing, an advanced form of DNA testing to link a semen sample which had been found on her underwear to Hoover. Calvin had died by suicide in 2015, yet if alive today, would be charged with the murder of Christine Jessup.
So, what are your thoughts on such an extraordinary breakthrough, Dr. Luke?
Well, this is certainly an extraordinary breakthrough in the sense that we are looking at DNA technology in a new way for forensic purposes. So instead of focusing on a comparison with a potential suspect, Like in classic trace evidence analysis, we're always comparing with knowns or reference samples. Here, we're casting a much wider net, and it can provide investigators an opportunity to reinvest or revisit an investigation and look for evidence that was otherwise overlooked, such as this case. So genetic genealogy is a new and wonderful investigative tools that can now be used to assist with identifying potential persons of interest.
Awesome. And now we're going to get into the interview with Dr. Luk.
All right, so I just want to start off by asking you, Dr. Luk, about how you ended up on a forensics career path and what kind of education did you get, and like at what point in your life were you like, oh, this is what I want to do and, have a career in forensics?
Yes, I think it has very much to do with my upbringing. So I have to start by saying, growing up, I was surrounded by people that I would describe as very analytical or very pragmatic. So both of my parents are in the engineering field. So growing up meant I had to justify everything in an objective manner. And that meant feelings were completely irrelevant. So I find comfort in a field where I can sort of operate in an environment that requires me to sort of deconstruct information and then look at it in a very sort of unbiased and an objective manner, because I had to provide justification for all my actions. Um, but I would say my biggest influence came around when I was in high school. So that would be in the mid to late 90s. There was a very popular show. I don't know if you guys know it. It's called X-Files.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, so in my high school English class, my nickname was Mick Scully, and a group of friends and we together create a short series using a good old VHS camcorder, and we did a whole series on death investigation into Shakespeare's Macbeth. So I can't get any more nerdier than that. But so I think it was the influence of X-Files that got me thinking about investigation, not necessarily forensic science, but that was an area that I really liked. And then really when I first entered UTM, and I went to UTM because I lived in Mississauga at the time, I started in the life science program, and as an extra course, I took 239. And after I took the introduction to 239 course, I said, one day I'm just going to work in the forensic science field. It was just, I could see an application to sort of my life science degree. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to pursue forensic science, regardless of where it brings me to, but somewhere in that career path.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear, seeing that as you teach FSC 239 right now. So it's like almost you've been able to come full circle with that.
Full circle. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what's your favorite part about working in forensics?
I think it kind of reiterate a point that I said earlier. I find comfort in it, knowing that every decision that I make, all the actions and the type of conclusions, opinions that I come to, they are always based on some sort of logical reasoning, critical thinking, because that's very much about forensic science. You have to justify why you did what you did, how you did it. It's a data-driven process, and you can always find comfort in that, especially when you go and testify. So I know I sound like a robot, but I promise you I am not. But in this field, when your emotions are compromised, it can affect the outcome of a case. So I think it's important not to be a robot, but to be objective where you can be, and to recognize when you can't be.
Yeah, of course. I really like what you said about that, especially before how we were mentioning about different biases in the case earlier. So it's important to like acknowledge them. Yeah. And also, if you don't mind me asking, so we know that you're a mother as well as a professor, and while working in the field, did you find that how was like the work-life balance? Were you able to take time off or spend time with your family, or when you were raising your daughter, and just things like that?
I think work-life balance is difficult for everyone, including yourself as students, right? So students, scientists, mother, father, guardian, whatever the case may be, we have so many different priorities and stressors in our lives. Certainly in the forensic science field, there could be extra challenges, part of which is sort of testifying in court. That's a very nerve-wracking process. So there could be nights where I can't spend time with family because I'm so nervous about a particular case and I don't know what kind of questions the lawyers are going to fire at me. So I need to study the night before. And then there's the traveling aspect. There's quite a bit of traveling. You have to travel to different courts. Obviously, now with virtual testimony, that might be a little bit different. But one has to recognize that that's also just part of the nature of the job. I think what's most important is that you make a commitment to say you block off a certain time. And for me, that's weekend is for family. So you block up a time to commit to your family. And it's also a good teaching moment for my daughter, because certainly she always wants time to spend with me, but I let her know that it's that family, we have to make sacrifices as family members to show children and people the value of hard work.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really awesome. Um,
Hmm.
would you say that the traveling before and um, the when you had to testify in court, was that very time consuming and demanding more so than other jobs, would you say?
Uh, I'm sure there's lots of traveling in other jobs too. Um, but with respect to sort of going to court as an expert witness, it's lonely because you're often by yourself, and you could drive for hours within. I mean, I worked at the Center of Forensic Sciences, and that serves Ontario. So I think the southernmost point I went to was Leamington, Ontario. You guys know where that is. Um, and then going in the other direction, Cornwall. I mean, everywhere, north, south, east, west. So you could be on the road for like 5 hours, and you might have to stay. I often, if it's 5 hours or more, I'll stay in that town and I won't come back till the next day. And the other thing is, there's a lot of uncertainty. Maybe I'll go there expecting to testify, and then I don't, because you can't anticipate how court goes. So there's a lot of uncertainty and waiting around. You just have to get comfortable with that.
Right.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing that.
no problem.
Yeah. And if do you have any advice for students who are interested in pursuing a career in forensics, or like what's something that or advice that you would have given to your younger self?
Um, I think I would say keep your net wide and your options open. Many students, including myself, and I would have told it to my younger self, is that people applying to the forensic science program, they uh, have this sense of, I'm going to go into forensic biology and I'm going to get a job as a forensic biologist or forensic psychology. I'm going to come out as a forensic psychologist. And to me, that's a very specific job, right? Uh, and job is very much about going to work and earning a paycheck. So what I'm hoping people can take out of this is that you find yourself a career where you can have multiple jobs, but within the forensic science field, you have to have passion and interest in the forensic science field first. And then you can find a career and build on experiences, which then help you build your character as an individual. It's what makes you unique. We don't need multiple forensic biologists or multiple forensic chemists. That's just a job, right? You just make sure you're in an area that you love. Um, and also keep in mind that you could be highly qualified. You could be that 4.0 student, uh, and you might have all the skills that you have and you have a super high GPA, but sometimes jobs come around and it's based on timing and opportunity. So don't be, my advice is don't stick to one job. Look at it from a career standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Victoria, did you have any questions as well?
Yes, so basing off what you said earlier, that you worked at the Center of Forensic Science, I would
Mhm.
just like to know, how was your experience working at the center as a forensic toxicologist?
I loved it. It's very fast paced. Uh, it's also important to know what kind of person you are. So if anybody knows me, I get bored really easily. So long board games are not for me. I need to be stimulated. I need to have new cases, new challenges, right? The sort of the need to be able to assess new information, applying critical thinking, and determining ultimately what's the best approach for a particular case. What I also really liked about working there was the collaborative nature of the job, whether it's discussing with forensic pathologists or coroners or police investigators, lawyers. It's an individual decision based on your training and experience, but you also have all these other sort of experts around you to help you determine what the best course of action is as well. So you're never alone.
Awesome. That sounds great. And then the next question I have based on that is, can you briefly describe your roles while working at the Forensic Science Center?
I can, this is a very common court question. So I'll give you my court answer. So I would often say, and we're actually almost trained to say this, we'll say, well, my principal duty as a forensic toxicologist include, so we have analysis of bodily fluids and tissues for drugs. So that's just analyzing, blood or urine or liver, whatever it is, the sample that we got. For the presence of drugs or alcohol. The second one is interpret analytical findings in a judicial context. The third one is provide expert witness testimony in relation to pharmacology and toxicology. So that's where my training is. We say conduct and supervise research in forensic toxicology. And research can entail just reading and reviewing articles, right? Staying up to date as well. And then finally, the last one, which is my favorite one, is provide education to our clients. So often we would provide sort of information sessions for police agencies, sexual assault nurse examiners, lawyers, and so forth. So those are sort of the main duties. Something that I love, because I'm a chemist by trainings, I often participated in method development. There's always new drugs coming in, or perhaps, people always want to do things faster. So, coming up with new methods where it's more high throughput, right? Every analysis, you get more drugs detected. So I also enjoyed that aspect of the job. And everybody can make it their own, right? Because we are all unique and we have different training, different backgrounds. So, there's the general role, and then there's other things that you can add based on your unique background.
Awesome. That sounds great. And then another question was, working in this profession meant regularly testifying in court as an expert witness, as you previously explained. Can you briefly describe the information in which your testimony would typically consist of, and why this is a crucial component for various types of trials?
So the bread and butter for a forensic scientist is drinking and driving cases. And so with respect to drinking and driving, or drugs and driving, right, we're really determining if somebody is impaired behind the wheel because they're a danger to the public. So that's usually one charge for impairment. And then if they're over the legal limit or not. So that's, again, drinking and driving being the majority of the cases. So sometimes you might come across sexual assault cases. And with those cases, we're often questioned about consent, level of consciousness, perhaps perception of things, or if they were experiencing any hallucinations. Perhaps it didn't happen at all, right? So those are the questions, especially if there's drugs on board. With respect to homicide cases, usually is this drug concentration fatal or not? Or perhaps it may, depending on what drugs are on board, did it affect the individual's behavior in some sort of altercation that then resulted in someone's death? Or poisoning. There's been, some poisoning cases with homicide as well. And then with inquest, those are just basically fact-finding process. I really like inquests. So sometimes that would be determining if drug was a contributing factor. So a lot of inquests that I've done in the past were related to workplace-related deaths. So maybe somebody was operating a large machinery. Did the drug impact their ability to operate it properly? Did it impact their ability to listen to instructions and follow instructions? Did it cause them their own death? Did it cause somebody else's death? Like that. So I think I've covered it all. If not, I'll be happy to have another podcast to talk about the other ones.
Yeah, I think you covered all the bases for that one.
Yeah.
And then another question I was just curious of, because we were talking about biasing information and things like that. I was just wondering, while working at the center and working on evidence, etc., were you provided with information on the cases you were working on, or not? Nothing at all. You just provided the evidence and analyzing as such.
Yes, we are often provided with sort of a high-level summary of the case history. So it often is a one-pager. It would give us the date, the time of the incident, the people involved, the type of evidence collected, the type of analysis that's requested. And I don't see this as biasing information. It helps provide me as a toxicologist sort of context in terms of the type of opinion that I can provide. What can I provide to help advance a case? So and on top of that, we also get a training on like unconscious bias and things like that. So I don't consider it biasing information. I find it useful information so that I can help provide an opinion that will better that can help the investigators.
Yes, that makes sense. Awesome.
Oh, there is one thing I want to add. In addition to that, case conferences are also very helpful. So sometimes we're provided with case history, but we can always contact investigators or the people that are involved to get more information, or maybe they want more information from me. New information comes about. And one of the unique things about being an expert is that you can provide opinions. So sometimes I'm in the stand and I'm provided with new information. And at that point, based on this new information, I'm going to change my opinion at this point. And that's okay because you didn't have that information before.
Yeah, that's really important. I think that you pointed out, like, when you get further information, that it's okay to change your opinion and it's not always 100% accurate. And it's really important to just be okay with like being wrong sometimes, and not necessarily that it's your fault or anyone's fault. It's just that you get provided more information, so you have the ability to make more accurate answers with that research.
Yeah.
And then another question was, since you were provided information on these cases, what was the most interesting case that you've worked on while having your time at the center?
So I don't think I am going to disclose anything that is not public, but what I can say is several of my criminal cases did involve a case history that involved Plenty of Fish, which I think is a dating website, and Craigslist. So what I took from that is I'm going to avoid both of those websites.
Yeah, don't answers online.
Yes, and some of the odd things that I've analyzed, which also involved a case involving Plenty of Fish, was so wine bottles, wine glasses, plates, vials, whatever. Those were quite common. But there was one case where there was crackers and cheese submitted, which is fine, but usually evidence might sit in the fridge for a week or 2 or 3 weeks. So, at some point I had somewhat fresh cheese, and then later on it was not fresh anymore. So the evidence was molding. One time I had to swab an analytical scale, like an analytical balance. And I guess it was, and I can't remember the case history, but it was probably involved in sort of some drug production place. And I think I detected every possible drug on that scale. It was the longest list ever. And I didn't want to testify in case they're like, well, what's this drug? And what's this drug? And what's this drug? And it sort of went on forever. So that was interesting. Now, this is not my case. I don't even know if it's true. I heard from an ex-colleague that somebody analyzed a plate of spaghetti because the husband suspected his wife was poisoning him. And that's not the only case that I've heard of. There's been many cases where the husband suspects the wife is poisoning him. So there we go. There's some interesting side cases.
Those are very interesting. Thank you so much for those. And then the last question I had was, if you're comfortable answering this, what made you decide to leave the Center of Forensic Science to pursue your current profession as a professor? And was it an opportunity of growth or change, or is there another reason for that?
Sure, I'll be happy to talk about that. Like I said earlier, everything is about timing and opportunity. And I can say that being a professor wasn't a goal or a profession that I even considered. What I just recognized over time as a forensic scientist was my love for teaching and educating officers and lawyers and nurses about forensic science. And I truly believe that being an expert and being on the stand, it's really a teaching moment, right? You're trying to inform the jury or the judge about your area of expertise. This is teaching. And you want to make sure that they are that they understand what you're saying so that they can make an informed decision about the information that you provided. So that's, again, a teaching moment. So when the opportunity at UTM came up, I decided to pursue it and see where it takes me. So, it's all about growth, career, just doing something that you like, but it's also important to step out of your comfort zone because I don't have formal training in teaching, but it's something that I think I love, obviously from my previous job. So step outside your comfort zone, and I think I did, and I'm glad I did it.
I'm glad that you did it too, because I love taking your FSC 239, and I think I speak for everyone. Like, I really enjoy that course, and I've only been in it for like half a year, and it's like my favorite course.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. Well, it's all the other experts too. It's a collaborative process. I'm big on collaboration. So
awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. All right, and I think I'm going to take it out to Noah now.
Okay, so just for my part of the interview, just some concluding advice and just wrap it up. So coming from like a student perspective, what did you do in order to study and to prepare when you're in your undergrad and your graduate school? Like, so what kind of advice would you give us to when we're studying?
I was not a very good undergrad or in grad school, but I can tell you what I'm telling some of my research students to do right now, that I wish I would have done when I was younger. So something that I'm getting my fourth year students to do is something called a strategic plan. And it involves multiple components, but one of the exercise involves just on a weekly basis, maybe Sunday night, spend half an hour, go to your Google Calendar or your fancy calendars, and block out specific times in which you're going to be studying. Write down all your commitments in terms of going to which class and when. Make sure you block out time for yourself. Like, I have to write in when I'm going to have my lunch, when I'm going to have time with my family. Make sure you have time for yourself in terms of a treat. Identify what's a good treat for you. So my main three treats are obviously spending time with my daughter. Another one is chocolate. And then one last one is 30 minutes on Animal Crossing. So, and those treats can change over time, but make sure you identify something. So when you're done something, I mean, you celebrate that so that it becomes sort of addictive over time. So that's what I would do. So I would say do a strategic plan. It takes only half an hour to plan out your entire week. And when you have a time frame, you're like, I only give myself 2 hours to study for this course, then you will know that I want to go through X many lectures. Whereas if you just write down, study here, study there, and then not have a time frame associated with a particular task, then you won't do it sort of efficiently or effectively.
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to do things in moderation, and especially with it being online. I feel like our time for a lot of people is getting like really complicated just because like, meeting this, meeting that, but now it's like even more hectic. Like, I really like that the school has like UTM and UFT time. So we have like even a 10-minute breather, just like check your phone, go to the bathroom, because I know after sitting for like 2 hours and I still have something else after, it's a lot. And I think it's important to be able to write it down and like give yourself the space and the time. So I great answer with that one. My next question is at UFT, often we have to apply again, third, fourth, to the upcoming years. What kind of advice do you have for application wise?
I would say with respect to the forensic science application, one component of it requires you to get reference letters, right? So I would say get comfortable building a rapport with your professors where you can on a virtual platform or through email. so that you don't become an sort of an unknown, and it's last minute, because you have all these other priorities going on. Last minute you go, hey professor, can you write me a letter? Or hey TA, can you write me a letter, talk about my work ethics? If they don't know you, they don't know you. It's quite difficult to provide a letter for someone that doesn't really have a rapport with you. So I would say establish that rapport. I would also, I'm going to say this to everybody, book an appointment with Teresa Cabral. She is our program advisor, academic advisor and program advisor. So she will have all the answers. I believe Teresa Cabral and our several staff members will be hosting an application session. And I do post that on our 239 webpage. So make sure you do that as well. And she will provide you with the necessary information for application purposes. And one more advice is, don't think that once you apply for the post, this is it, you cannot change and this is for life. Know that you can apply for something, and over time, if you realize this is not your thing, you can change. I've had many students that change from majors to specialists to major, forensic chemistry to forensic biology to forensic anthropology. You can change, all right? You recognize that there could be some additional time commitment because you may need to make up a course or here or two, but it's better than sticking through with something that you don't like.
I think that's great advice, just because like even talking to like us or like any first years, we all feel like the application is like really hectic and almost like, you have to take this class for this specialization, or like, it's not useful anywhere else. And I feel like it can feel a little bit restricting in that way. So I think that's great to hear. And I think we're all going to be looking forward to that information session for the application. So that's good to know that that's on the way for sure. And the last thing, just to wrap it up, I know you touched on it slightly in your 239 lecture, but what would you suggest for us to get involved in the forensic community outside of school?
Outside of school, well, there's a lot of societies that exist out there. So there's the Canadian Society of Forensic Science, there's the American Academy of Forensic Science, there's the UTM Forensic Science Day. Make sure you attend that so you get a sense of, I'm starting off as first year, this is how I'm going to look like by fourth year, which from every first year perspective, you're like, there's no way I'm going to be like that by fourth year, but you can. And this is going to be a time in your life where you have the most growth. I'm telling you, it's going to be exponential. So find a variety of different societies. You can join them. So I think student membership is quite affordable. And then that will give you access to a variety of like articles and resources that you can do. Some resources are free, so you can do like a little like certificate program here and there, and you can just start tacking that on your CV. I know we do have on UTM, and you have to contact Murray Clayton for that. He's our outreach officer. There are certain programs that he runs, like the firearm safety course. So just getting enough exposure in the forensic science field to really identify where is it that I like in the forensic science field. So yeah, that would be my advice. External organizations, getting certificates, learning, training where you can. And I'll try to update some of that information in the course as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to ask Dr. Luk before we wrap it up? No, I don't think so. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Luk, for joining our first ever podcast with IVMBI. We greatly appreciate it, and everyone's like super stoked on it and looking forward to it. And I think it turned out great. So once again, thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we'll have a new episode coming out within the next month and a bit. So this should be uploaded hopefully sometime next week. So yeah, thank you so much, guys.
All right, wonderful. No, thank you for having me and putting all this time and effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye.